It's just like crusted like fluids.
What happened?
His mouth didn't even open. Did you see that? He just stopped moving. It's not even talking.
Oh, I actually read about this bug. I have to get out and back in. What is it? Who? Locking menu. As soon as I went back to the core game world, fuck that! 40% utilization, 22 frames, get used to it. Even turning down the settings all the way to nothing did not improve the GPU utilization.
But the points are abysmal. 30 points for a headshot kill. 30. Which means if you want to get the same as an old school zombie headshot of 100, you need to kill 3.3 zombies per thing. And then you're going through ammo the entire time. And it's just boring.
Oh, a guy. I'm gonna assassinate him. I'm gonna assassinate him. Whoa! Watch this.
I wish I could.
Look at that. Was that the lamest fucking thing you've ever seen?
Playing this thing in its current state is like driving a Ferrari that's got a flat tire and the check engine light blinking. I mean, it's not quite on the same train wreck level of something like Anthem, but still, how some people have given this game perfect scores with these kind of issues, I'll just never understand.
Did you know that this game is the third game in a series named after a woman who allegedly smelled quite bad? And much like the stinky compatriot from history, this game's a little stinky too.
I'm a vampire.
Wait a minute! That was the fucking boss?!
Imagine, if you will, a little 8-year-old Ethan going over to a friend's house. And when he gets there, he's told about this cool new zombie game. Alright, sounds fun. Zombies are epic. When his friend boots up this brand new game and selects the weirdly named level Kaino Dar Taten, he's exposed to a brand new, love of his life game, that being Call of Duty Black Ops. Now, imagine the dismay he'd feel if you traveled backwards in time, slapped the controller out of his hands, and screamed in his face about how awful Call of Duty has become in the future year of 2023. I feel as though as time goes by, a lot of game series that we all used to consider untouchable continue to just deteriorate more and more in quality. And the ones responsible for it, instead of improving on their mistakes, opt to just lock themselves in their massive Swiss bank vaults and fester in their own pride and greed. I mean, at the end of the day, joke's on me, to be honest. I don't have a massive pile of money to sleep on at night, just my Link body pillow. But hey, that's a story for another time. Honestly, in 2023, I can't imagine being a console gamer. And that's not me being one of those autistic PC Master Race losers who loves to share pics of their battle stations amidst the backdrop of their garbage pile filled, musky, moldy, unemployed man-child cave dwellings.
My house! My dog!
No, bro, that's just me being practical. The PS5, bro, you're paying literally $600 to play no games. No, forgive me, I'm sorry, no, please, but the PS5, it got no games, bro. Don't cope and shout Ratchet and Clank in the comments. That series hasn't been any good since 2007. The Xbox Series whatever, literally $500, and the only thing worth playing on it is Roblox. Xbox, I call that the Roblox box in my book. But nah, man, it's all good. We're getting Starfield in September. That'll make the past 3 years worth it. For sure. Jokes aside, pretty much whenever these consoles do get games on them, they're usually available and are of higher quality on PC. Like Starfield, it's coming to PC also, and will likely run and look better than its Xbox counterpart. Which is probably not saying much since it is Bethesda we're talking about.
16 times the detail.
But what really kills it for me with consoles is just how little diversity and uniqueness there is with the games you can find on them. Maybe I'm only saying that due to the fact I've been exclusively using Steam for so long as opposed to console markets.
What kind of, not your physical presence, not your trash-filled room, your soul, what kind of monstrosity do you have to be?
But in my opinion, there's no way you can only play so many Call of Duty and Battlefield duplicates before you start to crave something more creative. And hey, I love a good first-person shooter. It's a fun genre, but there is just one small problem. Most of the AAA FPS games this console generation have been total bullshit. COD Vanguard, Battlefield 2042, Cyberpunk 2077, I must say less. Sure, we have these games on Steam too, but at least we have modders for these piss games to patch out the bugs that the developers always just ignore. And at least they're also not our only options. And that's probably the biggest reason why I could never see myself buying a console again in my life, let alone switch back to one. Because while AAA and more mainstream game series continue to seemingly get worse and worse with only some few notable exceptions, the indie scene, which is nowhere near as prevalent on consoles, continues to grow and grow with increasing amounts of creative, somewhat more mechanically niche, and high-quality games, most of which tend to run you at cheaper prices and take up less space on your storage drives. Better experiences with less investment? Come on, would you make that deal?
I'll make that deal. How about you, bitch? You make that deal?
I'd make that deal.
I don't blame you. Damn good deal.
So good, in fact, that the amount of relevant AAA games in my Steam library can be counted on 2 hands, with the rest being either indie or more niche titles, and a collection of big previous generation games, like the OG Black Ops or like New Vegas or something, for example.
Degenerates like you belong on a cross.
But at the end of the day, why exactly are so many PC users starting to fall back onto the independent game scene and ignoring most of the big titles of this generation? Could it be because many of them are contrarian hipsters who hate anything popular? I mean, maybe, I don't know. I only know like 7 of them. But they all seem cool, I guess, so maybe it could be something else. But I wanted to be sure, so I reached out to my friends of nearly 10 years now to see if that was the case, or if there truly was some deeper merit to them ditching the big budget game scene. And they all immediately told me to fuck off, they're playing BattleBit. Hey, you guys remember Battlefield? That famous FPS series that was good up until like whenever 2042 came out? Don't worry, he's gone now. From now on, it's just gonna be BattleBit. Now, just in case you've brutalized, just fucking smashed in Patrick Star and took his place living under his rock in Bikini Bottom, and you don't know what the hell BattleBit is, basically, it's like Battlefield, but if it was good again. But actually, it's still better than Battlefield. Now, this may be a bit of a low blow, but let's compare the most recent next-gen Battlefield game, can't even say that without smirking, and compare it to this, humble little indie game. 2042 began production in 2018 under the direction of EA DICE, had the largest staff for a DICE game in the company's history, and reportedly ran upwards of $2 billion, i.e. the literal GDP of a small third world nation, to develop, and will still, 2 years later after its original release, cost you full price $60 to buy. Or, if you're so daring, $89.99 for an additional 4 specialists, 10 guns, and 6 vehicles. And also, of course, the epic Lost World bundle. Wow! Dude, this is so worth $30 and like 100 gigabytes of SSD space. Bruh. The price of like 8 or 9 Starbucks medium lattes for fucking Fortnite skins, and for your $90 USD, your fucking gas budget for the week, or 2 weeks even, 64 v 64 on 13 maps, with bugs that haven't been patched since day one. Day one, of course, being 2 fucking years ago, by the way. This is, of course, with the additional peripherals provided to you with the purchase of our Battle Pass and microtransactions. This is apparently worth $2 billion, guys. This is literally the Moldova of video games. Battlefield Chisinau. That money was embezzled. It was not sunk into developing this game. And I think the ratings on Steam speak for that. And now, let's compare that to BattleBit, the game that has completely taken the FPS genre by storm in recent months. The game was officially released in June and has been in various forms of development since 2016. All of the work, by the way, being done by literally just 3 guys. You think they needed the entire Congo's infrastructure budget to make this? And brand new on Steam, this game will run you $15 for the standard edition and $20 for the supporter edition, which provides you with a whole litany of skins and cosmetics. Which I would say $5 is a fair trade for what's here, and oh wow, a 90% rating on Steam. That's pretty respectable. Okay, see, This is what I'm talking about. What kind of world do we live in where 3 guys with the budget of 4 pebbles and a shoelace can make a vastly superior game to an experienced studio with unlimited corporate backing? As I said earlier, BattleBit is pretty much Battlefield multiplayer as it was in the more classic era of the game. But being honest, there's quite a bit here that makes it arguably superior to any of the Battlefield multiplayers ever released. The core leg up being the size of the game. At a maximum, maps can support upwards of 127 v 127. That's a maximum of 254 players in a single match. All of their fighting spread out across large sprawling maps containing structures and objects that are fully destructible. Something which is unfortunately neglected in a lot of games, because beyond it looking and feeling nice to blow things up, it also adds an additional dimension of strategy to fights. Like, say for example, you and a few buddies have a squad of bad guys pinned down in a house. Sure, you could just rush in like in a lot of games and possibly all get killed, or you could wait for a tank or helicopter to come in for support and bring the walls down on them without risking any of your lives. Or if for whatever reason support is not an option for you, maybe you could get a guy with some charges to go plant explosives on the buildings while providing him with covering fire and blowing up the building that way. And speaking of support, I absolutely love the classes and vehicles in this game. Now, as opposed to Battlefield, BattleBit is somewhat more milsim inclined, kinda like Hell Let Loose, with an actual squad mechanic being present. The head of the squad, of course, being the squad lead, a more light infantry inclined class. The squad lead is meant to be the main guy leading players into battle, being able to set markers on the map and use the recon drone to scout up ahead enemy positions. You have your standard assault trooper, the medic and engineer classes, which are self-explanatory, I'm sure, the support trooper, who's basically the heavy weapons guy, and the recon trooper, who has access to top-of-the-line sniper equipment. If you're wondering what class I prefer, by the way, flying the Little Bird. And on the off chance you ever come across a squad of guys working together and properly communicating, they can perform pretty well for their team. Communication and teamwork are things that are definitely rewarded in this game. It is pretty rare to see out in the wild though. My recommendation, try to find some community organized matches. Honestly, I have a lot I could say about this game, but this isn't a video about BattleBit, so I'll save it for another time. But the point here is, BattleBit, I think, is a shining example of how utterly skewed the perspective of many major game studios has become. Like, throw bundles of $100 bills at massive overworked sweatshop development staff until they crank out a corporate product with a bunch of nothing selling points on the back of a box. When in reality, all you need to make a great game for millions of people to enjoy is passion and a meaningful vision. Not only is it a great game, but BattleBit is honestly better than anything Battlefield has put out since 2016. This game is honestly what Battlefield should look like now, not this. But enough with depth, let's talk about Call of Duty. Okay guys, I gotta tell you something really fruity. I don't play COD for its multiplayer. And not only that, but past Black Ops 2, in my opinion, the multiplayer has been shit. Come kill me if you don't agree. No, I've always been into COD for its story, for its quality campaigns. So when Ghosts came out and they stopped caring about the campaign, I stopped caring about COD. The only exceptions being Cold War and the Modern Warfare remakes. Those had good campaigns for the most part, but still, that's almost 10 years worth of awful games. And a lot of people agree with me there. That's not just me talking. And people still keep buying it. Hey Treyarch, have you ever thought about bringing back the dynamic branching story paths like in COD Black Ops 2? No? Oh, well, here you go, sir. Here, take my $60 for a mediocre 4-hour story in vapid multiplayer zombies mode. Let me sprint to go grab $60 from my wallet for you, Treyarch. This is nothing you haven't heard people say before. Something, same lazy game made every year, blah, blah, blah. You know the rest. But don't worry, because Call of Duty aside, casual FPS games where you can just turn your brain off and chill can still be extremely fun to play, and innovative at that. Now, originally I was going to talk about Ravenfield here, but I actually have an entire video on my channel about Ravenfield already, so I decided to choose a different game instead. But by the way, that's not me plugging the video or anything. It's old and shit. Don't watch it. Instead, I'd like to introduce you to a humble and very unique, but still casual FPS, Verdun.
It's a long way to Tipperary. It's a long way to go.
Verdun is the first game in the dubbed World War I trilogy, the other two games being Isanzo and Tannenberg. This is actually a trilogy of games I'd love to make a video about someday. A brief overview of Verdun will suffice for today's purposes. Originally released in 2015 and developed by independent studio Blackmill Games, Verdun is a multiplayer semi-tactical World War I FPS game set on the Western Front. In some ways, the game can be compared to something very lax like Call of Duty. For one thing, the maps aren't too large and are best suited to a more casual style of gameplay. The movement is more on the fast-paced side of things, and while the class system is good, it's far from being the most fleshed out I've ever seen. So what exactly makes Verdun so good? Precisely the opposite thing that makes a lot of modern COD, and for that matter a lot of modern FPS games in general, so bad or mediocre. It's unique and tries its own thing, and it stands out well for it. This is largely due to its Western Front setting. World War I, surprisingly, is a period of history that isn't given much attention in games, and usually whenever it is, it's more akin to something like Battlefield 1, where it tries to best focus on areas of war that are less oriented around the infamous trench warfare the Great War is known for. So, while I honestly think Battlefield 1 is a good game, Verdun is more what I expect and personally want out of a World War I game. And honestly, going back to the familiar traits that Verdun shares with COD, those familiarities actually kind of make the game feel better to play. In regards to the smaller map design, that kind of is what World War I battlefields were, right? Basically just small strips of land only a few kilometers long that thousands of men would die over the course of a few hours for, with no guarantee that it'd even stay in your hands afterwards. The fast pace of the players also allows them to catch up to the front lines faster after respawning, adding to the meat grinder feel of constantly attacking and defending trenches. So yeah, while Verdun isn't necessarily the most innovative game ever made, it doesn't need to be. It goes to show you that the casual, easy-to-play, less tactical formula for FPS games absolutely can be fun and fresh feeling in the current year. All it takes is just a bit of effort and creativity and a bit of personality. Something COD has been lacking for a long time. I mean, I guess I don't blame them though. If you could crank out the same safe game every year and still make millions for it, you'd probably be doing the same thing too.
I certainly would.
My favorite genre of video game ever since I was 10 has hands down been strategy games. You know, it started off with Advance Wars on the GBA, some of you may know what that is, and Dune, the Battle for Arrakis on Genesis, which none of you are gonna know what that is. And here we are now, 10 years later, with grand strategy games like Hoi 4 and Stellaris being my top time wasters. Another game that I would really love to make a video about in the future, by the way. No, I don't have a problem. Now, historically, the strategy genre has always been more niche than other genres, like shooters and sports games, for example. But even still, you have your more mainstream series and big-name studios, like the Total War games and publishers like Paradox Interactive. And in recent years, I've started to have major issues with all of these more popular examples. The Total War games, I'm just gonna say it, they're basically the Call of Duties of modern strategy. Like, yeah, they're fun, don't get me wrong, but goddamn are they shallow. Diplomacy is 2D as hell. There isn't too much to do on the map itself aside from clicking on towns and moving units. And you know, you may argue Total War is, it's about the battles. You gotta love the battles. 1,000 hours in Empire, you gotta love fighting. But like, the AI has always been total shit since the series' inception, so I don't know. Personally, yeah, aside from like Empire or like Shogun 2 or Medieval 2, I'm not very interested in the series these days. And Paradox Interactive, aside from the massive L that was Vicky 3, they make good games. They do. Stellaris is hands down one of my favorite games of all time. But, no, what is this? Look at these ludicrous prices, bro. Spend hundreds of dollars to play EU4 with soldier troop drilling. Stalin is invading Latvia. Pay 1 gazillion rubles to design the epic Soviet killing Latvian super tank. Pasir epic! Even Stellaris isn't immune to this. Oh, you want to join the Galactic Council? That's gonna be 2 billion sun cubes, please. Like, nah, bruh. This is not, ain't no way. This is not heat. This is the reason piracy was invented. Don't get it twisted. I absolutely hope I'm proven wrong about this. But in recent years, I've started to see somewhat of a shift in the strategy scene towards trying to attract more casual players. One of the top comments from my Vicky 3 video actually calls the game a mobile phone tier product. And as a massive fan of the genre, it's somewhat worrying to see. But I do have some good news. There has never been a better time to be a grand strategy fan. This is a sect of the gaming sphere that has been thriving in the indie scene in recent years. And there are a lot of games that I could talk about. A lot of games I'd love to talk about, but I've narrowed it down, and there are 2 games in particular I really want to talk about that really strike a chord with me. The first game being an early access title called Total Conflict Resistance. Hey, you guys know that really successful, extremely fun game series Mount & Blade? What if we made that game, but instead of a fictional feudal setting, we did a fictional modern warfare setting? That's genius! What's your name, son? Bash. My name's Bash. Now, yes, this probably sounds like a really insane and bad idea. Taking a game that plays like Mount & Blade and giving everyone tanks and automatic guns probably sounds like it wouldn't even work. I know I sure was skeptical going into it, but man, oh man, this game is fun. And to my detriment, it's hella addicting too. I've only owned the game for a couple weeks and I already have like 65 hours in it. One thing to absolutely get across though, like it says on the storefront, yeah, this is a very early access game. It's super jank. You can hardly go an hour and a half without running into some ensemble of bugs or glitches. But this game is pretty much everything I love about indie strategy games. There's not a whole lot of story to the game, the lore is certainly a work in progress thing. But basically, the fictional continent you play on was once a whole united empire, but has collapsed into multiple large nations and rebel groups, with many of the western nations of the continent being democratic and the eastern nations being communist dictatorships, with the ultimate goal of the game being to unite the continent like it was many years ago. But you don't have to if you don't want to. All things considered, I'd argue that Total Conflict is 75% a resource management game and 25% a military game. So it's lucky that the resource management mechanics in this game, for the most part, are extremely fun to use and challenging to master. Countries in this game are divided up into regions, and within the regions are a single big capital city and several smaller towns, each smaller town being proficient in producing a natural resource randomly selected at the start of each game. And in your towns you can build things like bakeries and quarries, and in the cities you can build refineries and factories, both civilian and military. And the cool thing about the resources being randomized at the start of each game is that, of course, you could get lucky and have enough of everything to be self-sufficient, but more likely than not, something is going to be missing from your towns. It may be something relatively unimportant for the early game like gold ore, which is used in things like tanks and advanced APCs. But if it's something like oil, copper, or aluminum, or god forbid, iron, then the only 2 options you'll have to reliably produce even things as small as bullets and rifles or to refine gas is either A, import the resources or the products themselves, or B, invade a country and take over a region that have those resources. So this RNG creates scarcity that can only be handled by making smart trade deals or starting wars, which is to say nothing of things like tobacco or beer or local police forces, which you need to keep your population happy, or else they'll revolt and siege out your cities. Whichever route you take though, be sure to strategize very well because your resources can be burned through very quickly, especially your manpower, which is slow to replenish. Speaking of manpower, how exactly do battles in Total Conflict work? Bannerlord with guns? No way. No way this can be good. No, it's good. It's pretty good. Now, battles can be quite janky. There certainly is a lot more balancing that needs to be done. But generally speaking, battles do feel very good to fight in. If you've ever played Mount & Blade, you already know how commanding troops functions. You press your F keys to navigate through a bunch of options related to attacking, retreating, setting formation and stance, etc., etc. The fun, however, comes through just how many options options are available in designing your army. Because yes, you can decide what weapons and uniforms your infantry use, and you can decide what vehicles your motorized forces will prioritize and use first before all others you have stockpiled, which leads to a satisfying level of uniformity and allows for you to design an entire military around your preferred playstyle. If you want to go for a more offensive doctrine, you can give most of your soldiers automatic battle rifles, and your motorized forces main battle tanks like the T-72 or M1 Abrams and rocket artillery systems. Or if you want to play more defensively, you can equip your infantry with semi-automatic rifles and RPGs and mobile artillery and tanks like the Su-152. And listen, even if it doesn't impact the gameplay, any game that allows you to customize the look of your soldiers and police is a good game in my book. Whatever you do though, don't attack a city with only infantry. Your army will get fucking destroyed. In summary though, I genuinely believe Total Conflict is a great game and is a shining example of everything I love about much of the indie strategy scene. This is a game that is taking a lot of risks and is trying a lot of unique new things that many bigger developers would probably be somewhat wary to ever even attempt. And honestly, this game's pulling it off. Now, just imagine if it had the budget of a big release like Total War Pharaoh or Victoria 3. I'm very eager to see what's ahead in the future. There is, however, one more game I want to talk about, and it's the type of game you could only ever expect from an independent developer, as a lot of the game is largely going to be just you staring at the screen and observing. And that game is WorldBox God Simulator. To give a bit of context as to how I found this game, I gotta give you guys a little bit of info about myself. Basically, I am a huge fan of world building, coming up with fictional countries and societies with their own fictional peoples and ethnic groups, and creating languages, history, conflicts, and politics for these people. And I've been into this since middle school. And this sort of history creation is quite common in books and with pen and paper projects, but actual in-depth history creation games are very niche. And for years, I didn't know of the existence of even a single game of this caliber. That wasn't until a Dungeons & Dragons friend of mine who knew I was super into this kind of stuff recommended this game to me, and I instantly fell in love with it. The basic premise of this game is that you're a god, given a world that you can physically build up and create terrain in, and of course, place living things within like wolves, bears, cattle, and also 4 intelligent races: humans, elves, orcs, and dwarves. And you can choose to be as benign, benevolent, or malevolent as you desire, creating things like natural disasters, crashing meteorites into the planet, or just literally fucking nuking everything alive. Personally, I'm more in it for watching the history of the intelligent races unfold, so I tend to play more benignly, unless I want a specific civilization to do better over another. But what's so great about this game is that you can optionally customize everything about the peoples and nations that are formed in this game. What the cultures are called, what the cities are named, what their flags look like, what their nobility are named, incite wars and inspire alliances, inspire revolutions and rebellions. This is a game that, if I had access to in middle school or high school, I probably would have sunk hundreds of hours into. There's just something so satisfying about seeing some random Stone Age clan advance into a Bronze Age kingdom that gradually takes over neighboring cities, eventually turning into a massive empire that goes on to conquer an entire continent, thriving for hundreds of years and assimilating the cultures within, only to finally watch it collapse into civil war and revolution after something devastating like a famine or plague, or people within it just being super pissed off at the ruling clan. If you're a massive fan of things like world building and creating fantasy settings, I cannot recommend this game enough. It's very affordable, and it is still getting updates that bring awesome new features to keep it feeling fresh and new. And come on, who doesn't love good sprite work? And this is honestly just what I love so much about the indie space. Whatever sort of niche you belong to, however specific and pedantic your wants are in a video game, if you dig deep enough, there's probably something out there for you to enjoy. A game that seems made just for you. So, I realized that this video came off more like a rant or opinion piece than an expose or some grand, thought-provoking critique, but I hope I still managed to get the point across. A lot of modern big games are just so poorly made and uninspired and so derivative and copy-paste of one another, and yet they demand a lot from their user bases, like full AAA prices, a large portion of your drive space, and will constantly expose you to things like DLC and microtransactions and season passes to add to your expenditures. And I think that's why a lot of people are looking more and more to the independent space. Because unlike these big studios, indie devs actually seem to care about what they put out for their fans to buy with their hard-earned dimes. And with how fresh and creative many of these smaller games are becoming, it's no wonder why many people are starting to ditch these once all-powerful titans. They're not worth buying from anymore, and they don't seem to care about fixing their own low standards. And quite frankly, if they don't care, then why should we?